Hey Branson, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
No complaints. Do you have a good weekend?
I did. I don't have a mother anymore, like a
Oh,
lot of people. So it's kind of my Mother's Day was kind of a little bit harder, but
yeah.
that, been really sitting here listening to everything and looking at how to try to evaluate my business and get it moving and looking at the problem that my business can solve. Me and my wife talked about it all this weekend. So I think it's a need for it in Eastern Carolina. Um, Really, there is no true like black or urban media market um, out of Eastern Carolina, especially with like news or broadcasting.
Right.
So, and also I look at the advertising end that could be brought to the table and businesses that could be pushed through a network like that. And I also have all the stuff to put a online TV station together too. So,
Huh. Cool.
but how
That's
was your
neat.
week?
My weekend was good. It was my birthday and my wedding anniversary, and yesterday was Mother's Day, so it was good. My mom is gone also, but my wife's kids were here, and it was crazy. That's
Mhm.
all I can say. But it was good.
I have a question before
Yeah.
everybody gets in. Um, with me working with the radio and the TV, and me also being a local personality, I'm trying to take my media company and almost move it like a status like Mr. Beast almost off of
Hmm.
mine. What would be a way to really start getting into that lane? Um,
Well, I'm not the world's expert on this, so take that with a grain of salt. But
okay.
basically, you know, if you want to talk about live streaming, which is really what YouTube is good for, I think primarily. And I also think Facebook Live and maybe Instagram. There are lots of different choices, and I'm really not sure what makes the most sense. I know in my age group, I'm 65, so my age group tends to be on Facebook. My kids who are in their 30s, they tend to be on Instagram, or God knows what, TikTok, you name it. So I think it's a matter of identifying the channel that you feel, offers you the most potential, and then, basically building your presence on that channel or maybe a couple of channels. Um, one of the things, there's just so many different ways to go about it. I don't know if you're familiar with Airbnb. I'm sure you've heard of Airbnb as a company.
Yes.
One of the channels that they have is called online experiences, and that's new for them. That just started in the pandemic. So what they do is they have online events, and it could be a chef cooking class. It could be it's all over the place. If you go on Airbnb, you can see um, kind of the range of experiences they offer, and they're all online. So you could do that same sort of thing. You could set up a kind of an experience-based platform as opposed to YouTube, which might be like a content-based channel, if that makes sense. So you could have events or almost episodic events that you could have, and you could promote to those events, and they could be it could be several hours long. It doesn't have to be 1 hour or anything like that. But that's I've seen quite a bit of activity in that space, not necessarily in your vertical, but in terms of building an audience, and also finding a way to actually make money from the audience. So Airbnb, for example, um, let me see if I can just pull them up real quick. Airbnb, charges money for their experiences. And so you got to have a platform that does that. Now, YouTube, I believe, also has some kind of way that you can make money as well. I'm not super knowledgeable about that, but the idea of building up a platform that makes sense for, what you're trying to do, I think is what you've got to kind of hone in on, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Traditionally we've seen, in the old days with regular broadcast TV and broadcast radio, everything was organized by the hour of the day and by some sort of show, and sorry, excuse me. And so the shows would be aimed at particular type of viewers, and the idea would be you would make your content customized so that that kind of person would watch your show, and it became regularly scheduled, and then you got advertised. That's kind of the traditional model. Now with stuff, I'm going to share my screen real quick, and we'll get to the class in 1 second here. Hopefully you can see this when I share it. Okay, can you see that okay with that
Yes.
Airbnb
Yes,
thing?
sir.
Okay, so here, for example, on the Airbnb is I'm trying to admit. Okay, Grant's here, so Grant can admit people. So let's just find one. Here's one called Hidden Jazz Club. Okay, so this is in London. It's an Airbnb online experience. They have a host, can have up to 20 people. They charge $21 a person in this case. Tells you it's hosted in English. It lasts for an hour. So this is essentially a show, really, it's what it amounts to. It's a scheduled show. It's about jazz, and they obviously have some jazz musicians that come in here. But what I like about this type of format is the fact that you can charge per person. I think that is really interesting. If you can get people to pay to come to your content, then that solves a lot of problems. It lessens the need for quote advertising per se. It may attract a different kind of consumer, a different kind of customer, if you will. Somebody who, in this case, really wants to listen to jazz or talk about jazz. So, this is something you can look into. So, the platform that we use for the class is called Zoom. Zoom is obviously a thing that allows us to do these classes. They also have a subsidiary, and it's called OnZoom, OnZoom.com, and it's basically a duplicate of the Airbnb platform. So you can set up events on quote OnZoom.com, and you can charge and do all the stuff that I just showed you on the Airbnb platform. Just about all of that is available for the OnZoom, and it's not very expensive. I can't remember what it is, but that's a way to go. And YouTube also has tools, as my understanding. I really know nothing about them. I think Mr. Beast and people like that, they obviously figured it out and do real well with with that thing. But it's not something I'm super familiar with. But I think if you've identified your target audience and creating content, and if you want to try to make money charging for it, or you want to try the model of selling ads or even memberships or some other way of monetizing it, I think it's all possible. Does that help?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hope that helped. Okay, so we got right a little bit after 1. Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in today. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood here. I hope it's nice where you are. It's certainly starting to get a little bit warmer. for all of us, and I like that. I don't like hot, but I like warmer. So, and I know in the case of Chris, we want rain. So I got that. Yeah, we want rain too. Okay, so today we're going to talk about branding, and really truthfully, um, I personally think this is one of the most important things that you can do as an entrepreneur. So even though we're going to focus on a few things here the next couple of days, we're going to constantly talk about this, and we're going to constantly kind of, I don't know what the word is, emphasize it. And so I want to be sure that everybody is pretty clear, the definitions, what we're talking about, and then you can figure out, I think, with help from us or your other resources, how to do some of these things for yourself and what you're trying to do. And basically branding is one of those things that is really critical for success, in dealing with consumers anyway, online consumers. So I'm going to share my screen with what I'm doing here. So let's see here. Hopefully you guys can see this. It's like a blue thing. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, so you telling your startup story, everybody can see that, hopefully. Okay. So let me see how to do this, how to make it full screen. Okay, hopefully that. So one of the things that we have done with our program, since we're new, we just started this past September, so we're fairly new at this. We have been fortunate to get help from other more established accelerators around the country. And this particular thing that I'm going to go through you today is from UNC Chapel Hill, and they have a really big entrepreneurship effort. This particular group is called Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Economic Development, and Innovate Carolina. But I thought they did a really good job of, and I'm going to give you this document. You're going to be able to download it and have access to it in the Slack channel or however you want. If you want to email, let me know. But this is going to help us think through the strategy that we're using for branding. So let's see if we can get it to work. Okay. This page, the idea behind this is really trying to show how even a simple thing like a letter, an alphabet letter, can look so different and feel so different. And that's really the point of this here. I like the R because it reminds me of Reese's peanut butter cups, which I like. But the idea is design and graphic can really make even a really simple letter can actually create brand value if used in the right way. Some of these are brands that you probably recognize. You might recognize Lysol here. There's probably others I'm not real familiar with. That looks like the Frito-Lay F and so forth. So Campbell's soup, I think, is at C there. So that gives you an idea. There's Igloo cooler, I think, with a little ice on the top, Oreo cookies, etc. So you get a sense of the power of design. So what is a brand? And this might be a little bit different than you were thinking. It's what you think and feel about an organization or even a person. We're going to focus more on the organization or the company, but we've heard the word, personal brand. My personal brand is I'm a great athlete, or I'm a really smart student, or I'm a smart doctor, or whatever. Those are attributes of a personal brand. We're going to be focused more on your company or your activity and the branding for that. And don't hesitate to holler out if you have a question or a thought. So this looks a little bit intimidating, but I think it can help you kind of lay out a framework for branding. And so there are so many things that you have to do as an entrepreneur. And I personally like the idea of an outline or a framework for the important things that have to be done. So this particular one is about brand. but you could imagine having an outline or a framework for product ordering or product delivery or any number of other activities that you do. You can break down in this sort of format. And so this will help you not just with the brand thing, but also just organizationally how you work with important functions that you have to do in your business. So we're going to start up here in the upper left with the brand core. And the brand core, I think a really good example of this is the Nike swoosh. You can see a Nike swoosh all by itself, and it means all kinds of things depending on your experience with Nike. It might be something sports related, it might be some other thing, but it's who it is right off the bat for the most part. And I would argue there's probably a handful of other, what I'll call iconic brands that can really give their message just with a logo or just with one graphic element. So the brand core are really brand values. What do you stand for? What does your brand stand for? Does it stand for, always fresh product, or our product is, the safest product, or, the fastest product, or whatever the brand attribute that you want to highlight? It needs to be a core value of that brand, because even though you'll be sick of it and you'll feel like you're saying the same thing over and over, it takes people, they estimate, 39 times to hear the exact same message before it can be registered. 39 times. So think of that. So you don't want to change, just because you get bored with it. But the idea of what does your brand stand for? What is something that you just will not do, but because of your brand, your uncompromising truth. Mission is somewhat related. Mission is, why are you doing this? Why are you even in existence? What is the core purpose? And this is often expressed. You'll see a single line. Some people will call it a tagline. You might hear other names for it, but it basically says, we're the quicker picker upper, or we feed hungry people, or whatever it is. You can get the point that it's a really plain and simple and easy to understand of your purpose, of why your company is doing what it's doing. And usually this is not long and complicated. Usually it's one sentence. Sometimes it can just be a couple of words. Nike's is just do it. So it's just an example of how you communicate your mission. Vision goes beyond that, and it's talking about where you're headed, where your brand is headed. The idea of an aspirational statement. We want to be the number one grass-fed beef in North Carolina, or we want to be the number one incubator kitchen in the state of North Carolina. Whatever it is that you're doing, but the idea of communicating to your customers the journey that you're taking them on. What is it that you're all about? What are you trying to achieve? And that's an important thing to be aware of. It's not something you'll always state or make an overly big deal about it, but people have to know really where you're going in order for them to become, really tied into your brand. So brand messaging gets more into what channel are you using to reach your consumers, right? So, for example, here under brand essence, 2 or 3 words that capture your fundamental spirit. That might really lend itself well to Twitter or Facebook, but maybe not to Instagram, just as an example. Or it may be a place where that is really relevant, maybe on the shelf of a store. But the brand messaging is a little bit more channel specific. What channel are you in? Whereas the ones above the brand core apply to everything that you're doing. Brand messaging is a little more situational, a little bit more in line with how you're trying to reach your customers. So value proposition, we always expect to be the cheapest or the best or whatever that value proposition is. It has both practical, kind of application, as well as emotional benefits. It feels good to be connected with number one in a category. Brand personality, I would argue, in today's market, with the digital market, websites, emails, the social media, all that stuff, I think your brand personality and your connecting with your customers. What are your human characteristics? If your company was a person, what kind of person would it be? Would it be serious? Would it be fun? Would it be smart? Would it be goofy? Think of your company and what kind of brand personality does your company have? And that message, to communicate that message, I think is really critical to success in the digital age. One of the things that you'll hear a lot about, the different segments of the market. We talk about the baby boomers, we talk about millennials, Generation X, Generation Z, et cetera, et cetera. Each one of those groups kind of has what they find most important. And one of the things, the largest group now by population are the millennials, who are basically, I think this is right, basically under 40 and over 25, if I think something like that, maybe 30 to 40. They really put a high premium on the experience that they get. They're not as big on getting items as the baby boomers might be. The baby boomers might be driven by price or getting a good deal on an item. That's not as prevalent among the millennials. They're more about an experience, or maybe they have a really strong belief in helping the planet. So if your value proposition includes carbon reduction or some other benefit to society as a whole, you'll find that group will care more about that than perhaps the baby boomers. I'm generalizing, but you kind of I think get the point of what I'm saying. Tagline, I touched on it briefly up above. Mission. Tagline is something that is going to become one of the most important things about your brand. You will find that once you have found the tagline that works for you, people will repeat it back to you. They'll say, oh, that's the company that blank, blank, blank. They get the tagline. And the tagline is a handle. It gives them a handle on all of these things that we're talking about. What your brand's about, its personality. Tagline, I cannot emphasize enough how important that is going forward in your business. And it's something that it's not easy always just to come up with it. It takes some time and some reworking and thinking it through really carefully. Messaging pillars are a little bit, think of them more like advertising campaigns. Like you might have a message pillar that is a theme maybe for Mother's Day, or a theme for students graduating from school, or some other life event or other important thing in your target audience's life. Aligning your selling point and your theme with those items will help set you apart from the competition. If your competition isn't thinking about that and doesn't communicate that kind of awareness of your population or your target audience's needs, then you'll automatically set yourself apart just by being aware. And there are lots of examples. I think if you can Google this, every once in a while you'll get an email and it'll say, today is pumpkin pie day or whatever. It's some kind of day. Almost every day it's some kind of day. There's actually a website that lists all of those, and you can actually create your own day. There's a mechanism where you can create a day and post it on that website. So you could be just for your business. So, and it costs a little bit of money. It's not a lot, but the whole idea of a day is really an attempt to communicate directly to an audience that you're trying to reach. And that whole idea of a day, whether it's, wear a white shirt day or wear a, St. Louis Cardinals baseball hat. I'm a fan of the Cardinals, or whatever. You get the idea. But all of this is really about communicating who you are and what you're trying to do and how you're trying to help people, what problems you're trying to solve for people in your target market or target audience. And last on this page, brand identity. And this is more important than you might think. We haven't talked a lot about it yet, but one of the things that's really important to building traffic to your website or to your social media, whatever, or both, is really your voice, how you write and speak to your audience. Now, we have opportunities to go live on Facebook or other venues, and so you're actually will be talking, and they can actually get a sense of how you speak and what you say. But more often, it's going to be text that you write. It might be in your product description. It might be in your service description. Is it a fun voice? Is it a serious voice? Is it what kind of tone and style are you communicating? And it's really critical that once you kind of figure that out, that you stick with it, or you can confuse your customers. They won't be sure of why you change or what's different, and then they have to go all through the process of discovering who you are and what you're all about. So the voice or the tone or the style, this is really important. And if you're the kind of person who jots down 2 sentences and sends it off in an email, that's fine, but you got to be consistent with that on your website and your social media as well. Don't have 30 sentences on one and 1 sentence on another. It needs to kind of be coherent and similar. Visual identity, we talked a little bit about, and we're going to look at this a little bit more, but that's basically logos. We're all familiar with logos, but in the case of a logo, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into that, as well as here, such as what color are you going to use, what kind of typography, which is the text on the graphic, what will that look like, how will that look, any kind of photography that's associated with your logo, particularly if you're a lifestyle brand, you want your photographs to kind of be relevant to your lifestyle that you're talking about or you're trying to support. And all of that communicates to your audience who you are, what you stand for. Any questions or thoughts at this point? No? Okay. Let's see if I can move on here. All right, there we go. The point of this graphic is really just to show how everything is interconnected. The point of this is to show that it all kind of goes around how your brand is perceived. Product design, website, even way up in the upper right corner, PowerPoints and other things that you do, your ads, podcasts, etc. It's really all connected. They're not independent of each other. They're really all kind of in one. So that's really the point of this slide. See if I can do some out here. There we go. Okay. A bit. Okay. Sorry, I'm fumbling around here a little bit. Wait 1 second. There we go. Put this down here. Okay, how do you build your marketing strategy? And one of the ideas is to use marketing calendars. And we're going to talk more about this. We're going to talk about email tools and social media tools. But the idea of storytelling is really communicating your brand story, all of the things we just talked about, and then making them as consistent as possible across the various channels that you might be reaching out. One really big one, I think that you can't really, it's so critical, I think, are quotes and testimonials or reviews, product reviews. I think that's really important. We know that in the world of e-commerce, particularly customer reviews, are one of the most critical pieces that people use to determine whether they want to do business with a particular entity. And having that capability built into your website is something that Shopify enables and others do as well, I'm sure. But the ability to take comments, quotes, testimonials, reviews is really important. The other concept here, by showing kind of all these different things that you might think are separate and not related, they really are all connected. And as you tell your story about your brand, you want it to apply across all of these platforms, and that would include the color of your logo, the type of text that you use, the tone of your communication. You know, if it's a lighthearted, funny tone, or if it's serious, or whatever it is that you're decided to do. These environments, these outlets, if you will, these touch points, you really need to try to make them as consistent as you can. They don't have to be identical, but they have to give the idea that they're related. I think that's an important thing. Okay, so marketing calendars can be really helpful. And there are a number of ways to do this. First of all, is anybody here in the group, are you currently using a marketing calendar? Anybody want to speak up on that?
I
It's
have
my
in the
first time
past.
here.
I'm sorry? Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear that.
I have in the past.
Okay.
I was saying it was my first time hearing of the marketing calendar.
Oh, I got you. Okay. So a marketing calendar, we're going to go through this, but let me just start off by saying it can be as simple as the calendar that comes with your Gmail account or your Outlook account, or whatever email you're using. There's a calendar function in a lot of those. And of course, there are also a whole number of other types of calendars on your phone, on your iPad, et cetera. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the point of this rather than the particulars. So the marketing calendar, it depends on kind of how you operate as an individual or as a business owner. You know, it might just be that you want your marketing calendar to cover a particular season. It might be the winter or the holiday or some other season that has a definite start and a definite finish. Or you might be the kind of person that just wants to have a whole year planned out with specific things going on during the course of that year. You can see here, there are a lot of things you can put on a marketing calendar. And this doesn't necessarily mean it's going to anyone other than you. Okay, I want to make that clear. But, product updates, product launches, company milestones, like you made your first million. Pitch events, which might be you're pitching an investor, things going on in your industry, trade shows. You can see it all here, and you'll have a copy of this. But the one that I find people will use mostly for this will be the social media and email campaigns, using a calendar to figure out how to do that, because in both cases, that's an outreach process. You're reaching out using social media or email. So you want to have that arrive at the relevant time for that person that you're aiming that at. If it is a holiday promotion, for example, you want to be sure that they get that promotion during the holiday season that you're trying to talk about. Print collateral really refers more to physical signage and things like that, packaging in a store, et cetera. And then the other thing you can do with the calendar, especially if you grow your team, you'll end up with several people working on a centralized calendar, particularly for things like social media and any kind of outreach. You might have 3 or 4 people at one point, all working in the calendar together. Somebody might be a graphics person, another person might be a text person, and so forth. So I mentioned the Google Calendar. there are spreadsheets you're familiar with, project management tools. There's a bunch of them out there. Trello is one I'm familiar with. There are others as well that you may be familiar with, but content calendar apps, kind of a step up. Loomly, I'm pretty familiar with. I know a lot of people use Loomly, but that'll actually, I believe that actually integrates with your social media, and your email will actually execute on the campaign, not just tell you that it's coming up, but I think it actually runs the campaigns, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so we started off with this, but how to convey your brand in a blink. And this is the whole idea of a logo. If you think about it, the logo is really the short form of all this stuff that we're talking about. What do you stand for? What field are you in, et cetera. And what kind of a reaction would you like people to have when they see your logo? What kinds of thoughts and feelings should that communicate? And this is kind of your seal of approval, right? This is your company flag, if you will, or company statement, without it being a lot of words. There are a lot of different ways to get a logo. Of course, if you know someone in the field that you like and you feel comfortable with, you can hire them to do it. There are also a number of online platforms, including some that are totally free. And I'll put those out for you all. But the idea really is to come up with something that communicates as many of the brand values that you can think of, that you can make clear. When you are talking to a designer, as it says here, you want to get all of the things that go with your logo. That includes all the different colors, the different sizes, the different kinds of formats that make sense. Like one logo might look better on Facebook and another one might look better on Instagram, just the way it's sized and the color. So you want to get all that from your designer, whoever it is, when you go about doing this. The other thing, and this is not mentioned here, but another thing that's true is, and you'll notice on here that some of these logos are just plain black, right? You see Nike, Under Armour, the Apple logo, the Mercedes-Benz logo. There's a lot of advantages to having a single color logo, particularly a black one. It will go in more places because it won't have to be a special file in order to appear in color. This applies maybe more to print collateral. When you go to print something, it's always a lot more expensive to print in full color than it is in black and white. So a black logo, single color, is not a bad place to start. You can always add color to it. And when you do add color, if people are used to just the plain black logo, for example, then it'll really stand out if it's a different color or it's striped or something else, which is kind of what Nike does. And I think Apple does as well. They do a lot with color, but their fundamental logo is just a really simple black one. As you get bigger, what you end up doing is, it says here, use your logo with care and consistency with guidelines. What you'll actually do is you'll actually create a logo guidebook that you will keep in your company as you get larger, so that everybody adheres to the standards that you have, the brand standards. And that's usually a document, whether it's a book or a place on a website or whatever. But as you get bigger and people are working on various projects, you want to be sure that brand value, that brand color, size, all that kind of stuff, you want them to follow that and to make sure that it's consistent. Becomes more of a struggle when you have more people involved, but there are ways to do it. And even some of the largest companies in the world have successfully been able to maintain their brand integrity, their brand graphics, even though they might be really giant. We don't have the sources here. They're listed here as when you need help. that Chapel Hill has. But there are a number of places that you can get this information. The site I use most often is one called Fiverr, Fivvr, I think it is. But there are several like that you basically put what you're looking for, and then people bid on it, and it can be as cheap as $5 or $10. And there are even logo places where they'll do it for free. Shopify has a free logo service. Even if you're not a Shopify customer, you can design logos using the Shopify logo tool that they provide. It's got a name like Web something or other, but there's a number of those sources out there that can help you. And in the case of the Shopify one, what I really like about that one is once you pick a design, they will supply you with all of the other formats that you need automatically. And it comes to you as a zip file. So you don't have to chase down all the different sizes and dimensions and formats. It's all in one package, which I think is really, really helpful. Any questions on logo or thoughts? Have you all had trouble coming up with a logo at this point? Okay. So this may be a little bit behind where you are, or you may have already gone past this particular point. Particularly if you're using Shopify or one of the e-commerce platforms, a lot of this is kind of done up front automatically by them if you use their templates. But this is kind of a good checklist to see, does your site have these features that people, think are important. One of the biggest ones is the testing. How long does it take your website to load? If somebody accesses your website on a phone, what does it look like? Is it readable, or is it not formatted properly for a phone? And there are a number of ways to get this, in addition to the platforms like Shopify and Squarespace and others. Wix is another, I guess. You also have design firms. I mentioned a couple. We have Webanopoly and Code the Dream on our platform that can help you with this kind of stuff. You all are probably more focused on e-commerce and selling things on your website. So some of this applies and some of it doesn't, but this is a nice little checklist. The big thing I like about this is testing of the way the website looks and how fast it loads. That's a critical piece as you go forward. So social media, and I would argue there's even more than is here. This here, they're talking about LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I would add Pinterest and TikTok to this list, and there's probably more that I don't even know about. But this is an attempt to basically categorize the social media according to the audience that's at that social media. So Instagram, for example, has been famous as a place where people post pictures, and the pictures convey the story more so than words. Facebook might have more text, more stories, more content, as opposed to pictures. And then YouTube and other platforms like Vimeo, if you're familiar with them, those are video platforms, and telling your story on video is a whole nother ballgame. I would argue it's getting easier, but it's still a lot harder than just posting a picture on Facebook. No question about it. We do have a tool that we're going to share with you that makes video a lot easier and a lot faster and easier to apply to social media. It's called Lumen 5, Lumen 5. And we're going to go over that. That'll be a whole lesson on that. It's really cool. You'll love it. But it's a way of producing video in a couple of minutes without having to be a big video expert. So I think you'll like that. But this chart here is an attempt to rationalize who is on what platform and what are they looking for in that platform. I would argue that it isn't this cut and dried. I think it depends on your brand, what you're selling, as to which of these channels. I do think it's important though for you to figure out which channels you want to use and you want to support that you think your customers are attending, right? They're in the channel, and there's different ways to test that. There are different ad campaigns you can do. You can do contests, giveaways, sweepstakes, sign-up campaigns, all kinds of stuff, and you can see which of these channels make sense. One overarching theme that I've learned over the years, and this may be opposite of what you think, but I would argue you cannot comment too often on social media. I would argue at least 2 or 3 times a day in your channels that you're using makes a lot of sense, and it gets people comfortable with you, particularly if you're being consistent with your messaging and your stories and your kind of the purpose of your brand. The more that you can share of that, the more your customers will respond. We have a student from our very first class who you may have heard of. It's called Simple and Sentimental. They're a website out of Greenville, and they post not only on social media multiple times a day, but they also do blog posts where they write stories about different aspects of their business. Sometimes they write stories that have nothing to do with their business. For example, sometimes on Sundays, they post recipes for Sunday dinner. And it's very popular. All kinds of people come to that episode to learn about what recipe is being talked about for that Sunday's dinner, as crazy as that sounds. So engaging on these channels, it used to be you felt like if you posted more than once a day, you were, quote, spamming people. That is no longer true. There are many, many more people on these channels than there ever have been, many, many millions of people. And really what you're trying to do is contribute content so that people can learn about you and learn about your brand and find you. That's really the primary purpose of this engagement with all of these channels. There are tools out there. One of them is called Buffer, Buffer. Buffer is free and allows you to post to 3 social media channels at one time. So you can, and it actually has a calendar function. So you can lay out a whole calendar full of content, and then the buffer will automatically post that at the times you've scheduled. So you don't have to do all that yourself. And that includes pictures, videos, whatever. And there are other tools as well. I'm just familiar with that one because it is free. Any questions about social media or thoughts on it? So this is just kind of a catch-all, and you will have this. This is a listing of some of the resources that you can use to create things. Canva is a really good tool. They have both a free version and a paid version that enables you to create all kinds of content, including video, including animation, all kinds of stuff. And you do not have to be, somebody who's really knowledgeable and advanced in that subject to create really useful things. Stock photography is important, especially if you're posting a lot of content online. It's important that the photography you use belong to you or you're allowed to use it. You don't want to be posting people's content, people's photographs without their permission. The way around that is to use some of these stock photography services, many of which are free. I know Unsplash, listed here, is free. And these are places where you can find photography for just about any purpose you can imagine. And then you can use it in your materials per the terms and conditions of the stock photography work for the website. Icons are a big deal, particularly when you're talking about phones and smaller screens. And there are different icons that you can get from these sources, Icon Master and Noun Project, and there are plenty of others. Email marketing, I mentioned a little bit. There's iContact, there's MailChimp. There's a bunch of these out there. We're pretty familiar with MailChimp, and we use one called Flowdesk, Flodesk. That is pretty much the least expensive of the high quality email tools in terms of making emails. The email you get every day from us telling you about the class, that has been put in there and it executes automatically every morning. That's a Flowdesk product that we're using there. Infographics. Infographics you might be familiar with, but these are graphics that have a lot of information in them. It might be like a flow chart. It might be a how to do something. So it's a combination of words and graphics, often called an infographic. And one source listed here is Infogram. Designers can do that also. The social media posting, I mentioned Buffer, and there's a couple others there, Sprout and Hootsuite. I believe Sprout and Hootsuite both cost money. They may have a free level, but Buffer has a free level as well as a paid model. Presentations is something more along the lines of maybe you're pitching a store to carry your product, so you'll have a presentation, or you're doing a presentation to an investor, or maybe you're a guest speaker at a chamber of commerce or some other event. So you'll want to put together a presentation. And so, of course, you're familiar with PowerPoint and those kinds of things, but here's one called Slide Model, and there are others as well. Video, these tools listed here are relatively heavy lift in terms of creating video. You don't have to be an expert to use Adobe Premiere Rush. iMovie, I would argue you have to have some expertise. Lumen 5 is one I mentioned that you don't have to have a lot of expertise to use. And then here they're talking about UNC students have access to Adobe Creative Cloud. We don't have that, unfortunately, but there is access to that in a variety of ways. And these are more kind of creating content from scratch kind of tools that, generally speaking, you would hire someone to use those tools as opposed to using them yourself. In here, these folks that put this together have some videos that you can use, look at, questions some you may have. So all these links are live. You can go to them just by clicking on them and seeing what they have to offer. Okay. All right. So that's what I have on branding for today. Are there any questions or thoughts?
Oh, Dennis, I read the article you posted on telling stories. I thought that was a great article. So it ties into the branding education that you're sharing.
Yeah.
I was wondering, and I think I have sort of an understanding from what you were sharing. In telling those stories, should they cross a broad scope, or do you suggest blogging, or should the story cross like different social media platforms and and the short stories continue to tie into a bigger picture, I guess is what I'm
Yeah, I
wondering.
think, one of the things you have to figure out is what channels work for you. So the answer to your question would be, I would put the story where you think it will work. And you might start off putting it in all of those places you mentioned. And over time, you'll learn that, oh, I only need to put it in these 3 or 4 places. I'm a big proponent of blogging, and not necessarily just because I think a lot of people are going to read it. They won't. But what blogging does is it provides Google search to finding your content. It's all part of the kind of behind the scenes process of content, content finding. So I like the idea of having a blog on your website, not a separate blog. So somehow have it linked so that it does come on your website. But it's really about helping people find you. And that's really the primary purpose of a blog, as well as storytelling. All of this stuff, you've got to find your audience, and when you
Right.
find your audience, then you'll become more tuned in, more aware of what they want to hear, when they want to hear it. When you're first starting out, it's kind of an experiment, and it's hard to say, but I like the idea of campaigns. I think campaigns make a lot of sense. So you have your stories that relate to that campaign, whether it's, a Mother's Day sale or, discover your special product. A campaign is a good idea to put content around and to focus your storytelling and your content creation around a campaign. And then as you move through different campaigns over time, then your content can change accordingly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else got some thoughts? Yeah, I think one of the things that you'll learn, if you haven't already learned, is there's no exact answer on how to do all this stuff. It's going to vary depending on you, your style, your product, your service. So really what I'm encouraging that you reach out and test things and see how it goes. And you might feel like no one's paying attention, there's not a big audience, et cetera. But that doesn't mean that's true. You could be being searched by Google or other engines that are designed to find exactly what you're doing. And the more relevant you can make your content, people understand stories, good versus evil, all of the kind of traditional storytelling themes. Put your stories in formats like that, almost like a bedtime story you're reading a kid. It sounds crazy, but people really like that kind of stuff. And if there is some sort of lesson that can be learned from the story, I think that's even more to your advantage. It isn't just today with digital marketing. It isn't just repeating an ad over and over and hoping people buy the product. It's much more telling the story of who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, the authentic connection that you make with your potential customers is really what's going to sustain you in the long run, in my opinion. It just takes time. There's no two ways about it. I do think also that you should look for opportunities, even especially in the summer. There are lots of farmers markets and other kind of markets that are out there. You may have the opportunity to participate in one of those, maybe even some sort of event where you can participate. Don't be afraid to do some of that stuff also, as well as your online stuff. That can help spread the word, because at the end of the day, what this is all about is what's called discovery. You want to be discovered. Your website, your brand, your product, you want to be discovered. So almost anything you can think of that spreads the word is probably worth a look-see. And it may seem overwhelming at times, but there are tools out there to make it a little more manageable. It can be done, and we're always ready to help at our end you know, with ideas and suggestions that, you know, that they might be able to help you. All right. Any other thoughts at this point? Okay. Tomorrow, we're going to go on branding again, and you're going to meet an unbelievable branding expert. Karen and some of them have seen him before. He's a wild man. He talks really fast, but he's really good. And in the last class, I think just about everybody took something from this guy and applied it, whether it was a tagline or how to do it. He's really good. He's done it for a bunch of big companies. It'll be a video, and I just love it. I hope you guys do too. I think it'd be really helpful. So any other questions, thoughts, comments, angry issues, anything? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming today and tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same station.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.